My father is a heroin addict. He went to prison when I was 2.5. My mom is not. My mom's one of those have 2 glasses of wine a year type person. And, my story is pretty, like I was addicted from day one. Like that is my story. Like it hit, I was 14. I remember trying whiskey, drinking it for effects. I tried whiskey. Within 1 week's time, I had smoked some weed, I'd done some cocaine, and I was on my way to Compton, California with some older guys to buy some PCP. Like, it was that quick for me.
You had addiction in your blood.
Yeah, I had, I'll even go back. So we were really poor growing up. Really poor. My mom she was a secretary of the real estate office. We were moving all the time. And like we would live in these houses that the real estate office would be selling. The problem is when they sold,
You had to go.
it could be a month, it could be 6 months, right? And like I remember moving 4 times in one school semester. And when you're the new kid at every school, you're always trying to fit in. You don't have those friends there. You want people to like you. You want to, you know what I mean? You want that attachment. It's a common denominator with me and a lot of my friends. So when I found drugs and alcohol, I fit in.
Right.
That was it. So my story about drugs is, it was, everything. Like it really didn't matter.
What did it feel like the first time you tried heroin?
So it was probably like the warmest, safest feeling you could ever feel.
Like physically in your body you felt warm?
Yeah.
Like
It
a
was
warm
just
blanket
like
kind of?
Yeah, somebody described it like that here not too long ago, and I really loved the description. It's like getting in that hot bathtub and you sink down in it, and you just kind of float there. And it's nice and warm all over you, and you just kind of like, And that's exactly what opiates are like.
Did it feel that way every time, or would that start to wear off after you got used to it?
Yeah, so opiates, you build a tolerance first, then you build a dependence, physical dependence, and then at a certain point addiction takes over, where your brain places a higher value on using than anything else. But so yeah, no, it's you never get that first bath back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it showers after that.
Right.
Right? Like,
right.
like it's warm and it's cool, but it's not that bath.
Right.
And that's the problem is that your brain remembers that bath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the best feeling ever. And so when we have heroin users that have some abstinence time behind them, their brain still remembers that.
The warm bath.
The warm bath. And so that's what, it's overpowering for them. And they want to experience it again.
For me, someone who has no experience in addiction, there seems to be a difference between if someone says, well, they're addicted to painkillers, and a little more sympathetic to that versus, but they're a heroin addict. And a lot of these painkiller users lead to heroin users. What is the difference there? Why is that separation there? Because they're one and the same.
Yeah. I think because when you're at, because it's on the same path, right? Like 85% of all heroin users started with prescription pain pills, right? So that's up here on this part of the path. The reason the switch happens is because you don't have enough money or resources to fund this tolerance and dependence that you've created. To answer your question, you don't have all of the symptoms here presenting as you do here, right? Like they might start there. They might be stealing the Xboxes and breaking into cars to try to support that. But once you hit the heroin and you have that, what we call dope habit, that's why you hear all the things that we hear in the news. That's why we hear about the girl that's 9 months pregnant banging 3 grams of dope a day, you know? Everybody says, oh, what a terrible person, what a terrible mother, you know? People think that because it comes from your doctor, it's different. And I'm telling you, when you break them down, it's the same substance.
I know you've probably been asked this a million times since you're a former addict, but what clicked? Why did you have to stop? What made you stop?
So I was sitting in federal prison.
For what?
Drug charges. And,
Selling?
Selling. Yeah, selling in northern Texas. So I was sitting in prison, and, my story is 3 things happened. My father had been in prison my whole life, and I was walking down the same paths as him. I got a letter from my son, Aaron Riley, who was 7, 8 years old at the time. It said, "Dear Robert, stop writing us, stop calling us."
Not dear dad.
Right. And stop saying you're our dad. You know, dads are there for birthdays and these things, and you've never been there for any of those things. And so I got that letter, and the third thing that happened was my little cousin had been shot and killed in a drug deal, over a drug deal.
How old was your cousin?
He was 21, and he was shot in the head with an AK-47. And so...
Was he an addict? Was he involved in the drug deal?
Yeah, he was, yeah. So, those 3 things happened to me, and there was a killing on the unit, and, I was talking to this guy. When those 3 things happened, I was walking the track with this guy, and I was telling him about my dad being in prison my whole life, letter from my kid, my little cousin being killed, and he said, "Come out here tomorrow, I want to show you something." And I came out the next day, and he handed me a piece of paper, and it was his time computation sheet. Next to his release date, it said deceased. And in the feds, you have what's called truth in sentencing. There's no parole system. If you get a life sentence in the feds, you die there. And so he said, "You're going to end up with this." Came off a lockdown 30 days later, and I went to a guy, and I just said, I got to do something different.